Times I get confused on what the fuss is all about. We're talking of the edge and we just figured out the cloud. From IoT and AI to the speed of the 5G. Saving on my bandwidth and with lower latency. Internet, take me home to the event where I belong. Let's talk about it. Edge computing, take me home to transform. In order to compete, I must transform digitally. But first I need to bring together OT and IT. From power plants and factories to cities and retail. We'll talk openly of ins and outs, how to succeed and fail. The internet, it take me home to the event where I belong. Let's talk about it. Edge computing, take me home to transform. Taught early in business, you learn it all for free. Even the elephant in the room, cybersecurity, internet. Take me home to the event where I belong. Let's talk about it. Edge computing, take me home to transform. Register now at www.zededa.com/transform.
Outstanding. Oh my
That's
God.
awesome.
Dude, you gotta,
Leonard, were you really playing with your mute button on?
Oh.
no. Jason, man, you got to go on the road, dude.
That's right. Yeah.
Why are you outing me out like that?
Good vocals.
Awesome, dude. You brought
That
it.
was totally
Good
killer,
message.
man.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
That's the way you open up an IoT coffee talk.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's also the best way to get people to come to your conference. Man,
Absolutely the best.
How's
Yeah.
it going?
it's great.
Great.
Yeah.
Good summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chilling in Keystone, Colorado right now.
There you go.
Heading on down to Santa Fe later on. So it's all good.
That sounds like another song.
It does.
Yeah.
You're right.
Santa Fe.
That's America,
We've
man.
driven
It's just a good
through-
song.
We've driven through 8 states in the past 3 weeks, so we're glad to be back in Bandera, Texas, because after that much traveling, you actually enjoy being home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's cool.
So Jason,
Wow.
man, it's great to have you back. I think the last time you were here was the first time you were here, which was episode 40. And this is like episode 64.
54.
So
Wow.
that's pretty amazing, right? It's like 14
Wow.
episodes later, you're back. And, I think that was February of last year. And hey, just want to start off by thanking you. What happened? We lost him.
He'll be back.
It happens. Well, we'll just keep going. Yeah, it happens.
Okay.
He's
happens.
like, peace out.
All right.
I did
Yeah,
my bit.
exactly. Bye. Oh, here he comes. Wow. We have you
I love
back.
it when it
And we're back.
pictures.
I just sound like
Wait.
I'm done. That's it.
You hit the wrong button. Okay. All right. Well,
It happens.
good to have you back. Yeah. No, I just wanted to thank you and the ZEDEDA organization for donating to Elevate Our Kids. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great cause. Hey, Stephanie, you want to talk about Elevate Our Kids? Maybe help our audience understand a little bit about what we're trying to do there and how we're linked to it, and all the good that we're going to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So last year we launched elevateourkids.org, And specifically, we saw the homework gap, the digital divide being a really big challenge for United States K through 12 students, specifically because they were all forced to remote learn and parents were kind of pulling their hair out. But think about all the
Uh-oh.
Think about all the
Oh,
yes.
no. Okay, so
Yes.
we're thinking about all those kids who don't have connectivity, don't have laptops, and don't have access
so
And now you're back, Stephanie.
Now
for the
you're
first
back,
time.
and
And now
your
you're
face
gone
is
again.
frozen. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so now you're
And-
frozen again. But sometimes you don't know you're frozen, you know? Like
Yeah.
you don't know that you're in the matrix when you're in the matrix. You think it's the normal world.
You might be back in the matrix.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, Elevate Our Kids has been amazing. You know, you're right. COVID hit, and so jumped right in, getting laptops to those kids who had to work remotely. Been working with T-Mobile to get the little Wi-Fi hotspots with LTE, because that's the other half of the equation. You know, I've certainly seen it. You know, like I've told you before. You know, my wife's a school teacher, so she was having to teach online, and then not only did we have the laptop problem, but we had there's lots of families I know in our school district that, you know, didn't have broadband or any kind of connectivity at their house, depending on where they were. And so working with T-Mobile has been good to take care of the other side of the equation on the connectivity.
Yeah.
And it looks like Stephanie's back from the Matrix.
Yeah. So we covered
yeah,
for you.
you know what? Well, what I realized is when I walked back to my office with my laptop in my hand, I was still connected to the living room internet. So I had to switch back to the home. Back.
Much better.
But yeah, so we encourage you guys to take a look at the cause, elevateourkids.org. And if you have the means, donate. You can donate there, and you can also visit there if you know some families that are in need of hotspots. There's a link there, and you can click on it, and it takes you directly to T-Mobile's application form where you can get a free hotspot and 6 months of free internet. And I think we're also subsidizing quite a few Tulsa kids for their internet for 3 years. And it also is not just for one student, it's for the family. So there's some great resources out there. I know that the federal government has also launched quite a few billion in funding to get access to funds for the same kinds of things, but those monies will not be available till next year for purchasing. So hop on to our site and see if we can get you either support or if you can donate to the cause. We would really appreciate it.
Yeah, and ZEDEDA made that contribution as lending to the cause. So thank you so much, Jason, and everyone at ZEDEDA.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Yeah, and and so tell us a little bit about ZEDEDA Transform 2021. It looks like everyone here is going to be there.
Yeah,
right? We're going to be doing something, whether on a panel or.
Yeah, we short of the amazing theme song. What else is there to talk about?
What else is there? Yeah.
No, so it's our second annual. We're doing it virtual. We actually were going to do an in-person reception, kind of a hybrid between day one and day two, but just given with Delta and all that, decided to pull that. But it would be definitely nice to see people in person again. So virtual, it's completely free. We have, I think we're over 100 speakers now throughout the day. So it's both days. It's day one is all thought leadership. Around edge computing, all the bells and whistles with different technologies and AI and 5G and IoT and you name it. But we try to make it just diverse opinions, as actionable as possible, blending between what we're seeing in verticals, between manufacturing and retail and oil and gas, and more of like utilities and renewables energy and the like, buildings. What we're seeing both from technology and business trends, SaaSification is a hot topic these days in terms of how do people offer things as more as services. So we're going to talk about that, including having people both from the operations or industrial world and the IT world. So a lot of great companies and speakers participating, yourselves included. And so we really appreciate that. And it should be a good day. It's free.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us too.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, if you go to ZEDEDA.com/transform, all the linkies are there. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, just like being on the road doing this stuff. I know I'll be in Mesa, Arizona next week doing it, but I remember being with you doing it last year, and I was in Moab.
Arches, baby.
That's right.
Arches.
You were
Yeah, it was crazy.
a world traveler.
Out there on the road, trying to make the most of summer when you can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it'd be
Monument
interesting.
Valley.
Oh yes, that's so beautiful. You know, Jason, it would be great for the audience too. Is just if you could tell them what ZEDEDA is all about. Maybe, you know, I think a lot of people know about edge computing. Maybe what's different about what you guys are doing versus what everybody else is doing. Maybe secret sauce.
Yeah, cool. So for starters, the last thing the world needs is another IoT platform.
Shit.
We got a lot of.
There we go. Now we're officially explicit on our
There goes our
Spotify.
G rating. Now the children can't watch this just because of that.
Yeah, where we're headed, you know, do one set of things really well, and then be part of a broader, you know, ecosystem. And so ZEDEDA, what we do is you know, we call it orchestration. So that's management and security of deployed edge computing nodes. So I could have servers in clusters from the fringes of a traditional data center all the way out to like a truck in the middle of nowhere, or a wind turbine, or, you know, you name it, factory floor. And so so we do orchestration for hardware and software. We have an app marketplace that makes it easy to deploy, whether it's third-party apps or your own out. We leverage an operating system that runs on edge hardware called EvoS from Linux Foundation. It's open. Think of that as kind of like the Android equivalent for edge computing. That's very opinionated to run on edge hardware, deal with security, support any kind of application, any kind of hardware, all the complexities you see out in the field. And then the cloud component, which is what we sell, the SaaS offer, think of the marketplace as sort of like the Google Play equivalent of that equation. And so we're not in the data path. Our go-to dance move is orchestration and do it really well. And then you choose, you know, what hardware and applications and the different things you want to use with it. And so the Transform event is a lot of it is about bringing together not only, you know, end users and different customers and people from the industry, but also a lot of our partners that we're working with, and kind of how do we like to say we're the rug that ties the room together, so to speak. Or another way I put it is we build the gut so you can bring the glory.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Orchestration's just a critical element of edge computing. I think people don't realize that. You know, so many people have been building what I would just consider hub and spoke IoT platforms where it's simplified. When you're doing the cloud, it's one to many. And so that actually makes it easier. But when you go do edge computing, you've got a whole bunch of edges, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of edges. And now you've got this orchestration issue to deal with, which you don't have that problem with the cloud.
Yeah.
But the cloud has its own challenges. Like it's far away. It has problems with, you know, security governance. It has problems with latency. It has, you know, munching on data. It has problems with high cost. You know, some people have factories that are spitting out terabytes of data per hour, and it costs a lot of money to ship that data over expensive bandwidth to a distant cloud data center. You know, they need to process that data right there locally. And yeah, the latency is a big thing for a lot of people too. It just depends on the use case, I guess.
Yeah. So we think it's really important to decouple. Like, I mean, IT 101 is decouple your applications from the infrastructure. Like, when's the last time your ERP system managed your PCs? You know, you just don't do that. But in IoT for the past 4 or 5 years, as we've just seen so many platforms, everything's kind of munged together. I do everything. You know, I can do analytics and visualizations. Oh, I do AI, but really I have a rules engine. You know, I do management and security, but you know, security to most folks is like, I have TLS connection to the back end and I have role-based access control. I'm good, right? No, like, you know, our solutions like down to silicon, you know, digital ID, you can't log into the box anymore. You have to go to the back end with role-based access control, measure to boot, remote attestation, distributed firewall, yada, yada, like so many different features built from the ground up that a lot of the solutions out there just don't have.
Yeah.
Security is a cost center. People don't think about it up front. And so a lot of people come to us, they're like, oh, I don't understand. I'm working on my app. I don't know. But once they try to get past POC party of few, they usually come back and say, okay, tell me more. This is really hard to do it.
Yes.
You mentioned, Rob, like out in the field.
You don't want to be the next Colonial Pipeline.
No, that'd be
Yeah.
So talk about you talked about SaaSification. So we're already dealing, I think everyone, when we talk about, especially on the industrial IoT side, we're moving, and especially because of the pandemic, it's like we're all about remote access, remote monitoring, not having to manually interfere. So talk a little bit more about the software as a service piece to this and how that's evolving and what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously there's a lot of legacy software out there. I mean, everyone's trying to kind of move towards this model of not only how do I offer things more as an OpEx versus CapEx, how do I do things more remotely, for reasons mentioned, but there's also a lot of legacy software, so it's not like you can just drop everything and change over. Mm-hmm. And so the trend that we're seeing with folks working with us is because we can support legacy apps and virtual machines along with modern cloud native containerized apps, it gives people a transition path, and because of our cloud is served as a subscription, SaaS, it gives people a transition path to kind of lift and shift the workloads that they're running today, maybe on the factory floor, out in a retail store or otherwise, and then add new applications that are built kind of with modern practices, cloud native practices alongside. And it just gives them that kind of infrastructure to evolve into it. So a lot of people are wanting to do it. How services are delivered from the industrial players are definitely changing. I believe 5G is changing how people, who and how people deliver, who delivers networks. And so you need tools that are flexible, because we haven't even begun to see the different types of business models, I think, that are going to pan out over the next several years.
Business modeling is hard.
Business modeling, yes.
Yeah, it makes the technology seem really easy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the top two challenges with IoT have nothing to do with technology. It's business case and use case and people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You're right. Oh my gosh. I think about how many times it took when I was at Azure IoT, when we were incubating that. It took us several times to come up with a pricing model. We kept getting it wrong over and over. And then the same thing happened with Lumada. It took us a long time at Hitachi to come up with the right pricing model. It's just hard to do.
Yeah. Everything you attach pricing to drives some sort of, good and bad behavior.
Yeah.
Whether it's nodes or it's the amount of data, you're metering data or API calls or whatever, like.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not just that. I think a lot of billing systems aren't even, many of them, that's what I'm hearing, aren't even prepared for some of these new business models. So you may be working in an existing kind of financial or transactional platform on the back end, and just, it has such limitations. They're having to create, enforce, and rewrite and adjust some of the modules that are in these systems, or work with their design engineers or with their third-party vendors to get some of these things forced, because some of the newer business models don't have any of those capabilities. That it's just there's limitations in the software itself on how you build.
Yeah, big time.
We've even seen it with the sales forces of companies that are they're trying to adapt to new models, maybe a software-led model, and it's a struggle. So there's a big industrial player that I've worked with in the past, would sell like racks of compute for factory floors, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and tried to move to more of a software-led sale where it's kind of a subscription type thing. And people are like, well, I don't understand paying $100,000 for software, but I can understand paying $100,000 for this big brick of metal and all that. It's tangible. I can see it and whatnot. And so just even the perception of what money is attached to is interesting. But increasingly people are going towards the, just give me all of it, hardware and software. It's tangible, but I want the easy button.
Yeah. So like it's easier to put together a flat rate model. But you're saying from some of these, if they don't actually touch it, can see it, see that it's big or something, they're like, no, that sounds so expensive. So perception-wise, we have a hump to get over. It's really more, it's like you're going to have to present and showcase what's the value, the ROI, how do I pay for this, and when am I going to actually get some value out of this? Because businesses are just really challenged. They want to see it, and they want to see it fast, especially from an ROI perspective.
So I want to make sure I heard it right. Jason, are you wrapping hardware in with software as part of a subscription?
We're doing that on a case by case basis. So we're a SaaS offer, but for these reasons, we're working with a lot of the hardware OEMs and people like the fact that they can kind of get a box, it's preloaded, connected to power and network and go, and then click buttons from the marketplace to deploy things. And we're integrated with clouds like Azure, and we just announced a partnership with Google and working with a bunch of different companies, but. Increasingly, we're seeing people that just want the one hand to shake, model and want it all together. So we're
So from a partnership perspective and a relationship perspective, ecosystem wise, you may not be the front person. Someone else might be the front person that owns that particular enterprise account or whatever, but you working with all these relationships and understanding who should I be working with, what are the customers actually, what do they need? And people want plug and play. They want out of the box. They want it to be very simple. And they don't want to have to deal with a lot of different vendors from a transactional perspective or even relationship perspective. So how do you work on your branding and your positioning with all of these partners? Because it is so congested and there's so many out there.
Well, I mean, we're kind of a fundamental layer below, the application stacks and above the hardware, of course, and so it does serve as a unifying element in the fact that it's a fundamental part of delivering a solution. So that makes it a little bit cleaner than if you were a flavor of analytics or a flavor of XYZ of how do you kind of fit into the broader mix. So that's helped. And a lot of it's just about education and IoT is a big, IoT and edge. It's a big, it depends. So you just kind of have to work through it. But it helps that we're not in the data path. We've got a very specific thing that we do really well, and we're not trying to be everything to everybody.
Hey, you mentioned that all the time. You bring that up all the time. And we're not in the data path. There's people who are probably scratching their heads wondering what you mean by that.
Yeah, so we deliver
all the time.
Yeah. So not in the data.
He's like, let's be clear, we're not in the data path.
I mentioned that
I like that. Read my lips.
Basically there's a lot of IoT platforms. There's a lot of folks that obviously are concerned about where their data is going. We manage the hardware. We help you deploy applications from wherever they may be, make it really, really simple, do security, but where those applications send data, it's not to us. There are platforms where you would be in the data path is like, hey, process your data, from devices out in the field, send it to my cloud, and then you can pay me more money to send it anywhere you would like. Mm-hmm. That's in the data path, even though it's open, you've got open APIs, but you're paying for every bit of data that flows through. For us, you're only paying for the fundamental orchestration service, which gives you complete flexibility over what you're building.
Yeah. I mean, this reminds me of just being in the device management space. Yeah. We would always say, we're not on the user plane, the data plane, we're the control plane. Yeah. We're managing your smartphones, push out soft, the usual stuff. Totally. We're not about the data. I get it. Somebody's mowing behind me now.
Yeah, I mean,
I just got an invite to get on Xbox Minecraft from some kid. So.
Well, if you need to leave, like we understand.
Yeah, we can understand. It's Minecraft after all.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just. I think we're starting to get to the phase of the evolution of, and it happens in any new technology where everyone comes out swinging, we're going to own everything, it's going to be awesome. And then people realize, okay, this is painful. Maybe I should do something really well.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's going to be really painful. It's also not going to be what a lot of people think it is at the moment. And what I mean is edge
so
computing.
many vendors went down that path where they're like, we have this solution and we're covering these 10 verticals, and we have the platform, we have the software, we have our analytics partners, we're going to do everything for you. And those folks have not made, they're not making money. So, that crash and burn of I'm going to do everything and do all these pieces and put them all together for you, that's just not working well out there in the IoT market today. And people are not coming to, for example, an AT&T or an IBM and thinking that they're going to do it all. They just know better. And so I think that a lot of that dust is starting to settle. And for those companies that were going after that, casting that wide net, they realize we're not moving the needle. We have all this marketing and vaporware out there, but we don't really have customers, and we're not scaling these customers. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the marketplace.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you guys are pioneers in a way, and I mean that in all sincerity, because you guys donated to a nonprofit. This is not a sponsored episode here. I'll just tell you the truth. Edge cloud is a brand new thing for most people, and whether you're a telco, you're a hyperscaler. I mean, we haven't really seen it before. You can argue that's what the CDNs have been doing, but no, not really. And so you guys are, and Jason, you and I have talked a lot about this. You guys are thinking ahead. You see what the problems are going to be. And Rob mentioned orchestration. It's absolutely important. Management of resources, coordinating, and being able to microsegment and create these little zero trust zones across a massive what you could call a sort of a shared public / private. There's like a whole mishmash of resources out there that are going to be exposed to this quote unquote edge cloud. That's all stuff we haven't really figured out yet. And anyone who says that is high on crack. Because the specifications aren't even quite there yet, right? Whether you're looking at it from a 5G angle, you're looking at it from a cloud or a Kubernetes container serverless perspective, the stuff is not there yet. We don't even have network placement and advanced network placement or compute service placement mechanisms available to us right now. Those are all work in progress things. So for anyone to sit there and say that we have this, you really have to be suspicious. What you have to do is, you start to encounter some of these barriers or issues as you're looking to do something special with the cloud. You really do need to look at folks who already see the problems, and I think you and I in our conversations over drinks in Barcelona and wherever, we've had plenty of those types of discussions. And I appreciate your thinking around all this stuff, because it's really progressive.
So Jason, I want to shift real quick, because I think that since you guys are connecting with all these ecosystem, the customers, and putting this event together, you probably have kind of a beat on some of the hot topics. What are some of the cool topics that you guys are going to be covering in the event? Because it all ties back to what people are thinking. What are the questions out there? What are the challenges out there? What's happening? So I'd love to hear, some of the topics you guys are covering.
Yeah, I mentioned SaaSification. I mean, the common ones are always things like AI, or in our case, Edge AI. 5G is always a hot topic. Talking about ecosystem, we've got a discussion on how does all of the above relate to how channel players are kind of adapting to the market, and that kind of ties back into the new types of service offerings. You look at the macro trends we split it apart, but if you look at oil and gas and energy, almost all the oil and gas companies are now energy companies. They've kind of rebranded because of the whole macro trends around electrification. And consumer generated power. And, you know, being from Texas, we know the grid is a little fragile. We talked about that before, but there's a lot of different threads. And so by slicing it kind of horizontal and vertical and you know, these different topics, I think there's a lot of good conversation. That the keynote address, which has got leaders from Microsoft, VMware, SUSE, our CEO, Saeed, you know, it's titled, "Is the Edge Really Eating the Cloud?" Because there's been some clickbait, you know, out there around, oh, you know, cloud's going away. It's like, well, not really. It's really about a continuum. And so, you know,
I like that.
try to keep a little spicy at times. And I know, Stephanie, you're coming back for the State of the Stack, which was popular last year. Is like kind of where have we been and where are we headed? And so, yeah, it's a mix. I mean, we find, well, try to talk about the people part as much as the technology itself is important. Actual use cases and anecdotes, because I've been to a lot of these conferences where, you know, it's just kind of a regurgitation of a bunch of, you know, buzzword bingo, and it's not actually like, what about the practical problems of doing things in the real world? Because as we were saying before, that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
You know, how do you get to this future state that we're talking about, but also just solve some basic problems today? And so that's where we try to make it a bit more practical in that sense as well. So yeah, I think it'll be a lot of good conversations.
Cool.
Yeah,
I think it's a good cross section. I mean, to me, I mean, personally, when I attend events, I want to hear, where is this being applied in industry? Give me some examples. I want to hear from the users what their experiences were, how they're implementing it and managing it all, and who they're working with. To me, those types of stories are so much more interesting than, let me talk about, you know, the technology from A to B, and let me make sure I get the buzzwords in. Oh, ML, AI, 5G, edge.
Kathy, no.
Got it all covered. Check, check, check. But you know, you got to add that as a hashtag, though. Just
yes, you know, when a tech trend is moving out of fad phase, when people talk about actual implementation more than the technology itself. But yeah, we're headed there, and we've got some customers joining that you know, kind of definitely realize the challenges of the scale factors we talked about, and you know, kind of tell their stories. But yes, it's good stuff. Rob will have to work some digital twin into the 5G panel.
Oh my gosh. Some of the stuff that we were talking about in our thread this yesterday and today, I said broadband over power line, digital twins. we can take it to the hardcore level where digital twin has to be pulled into the conversation some way or another. What did you say? XRTT digital twin?
Oh yeah, that's right. On the CDMA side, it was 1XRTT was kind of the equivalent to GPRS back in the 2G timeframe. Yeah, I have to admit. So I'm up here in Colorado at this Mountain Connect event. I don't know if you guys know Jeff Gavlinski. Anyway, he saved my bacon. I did at a great panel discussion keynote, and then at the end of the day yesterday, I had to do a digital twin session, and I was not connecting with the audience at all. It's all mostly rural broadband fiber folks, and I was going medieval deep programmer.
Oh, Rob, you had them off in a fake.
So I had to, but I had to pivot rapidly. And Jeff, who puts on the event, he was in the audience, and he totally saved my bacon. He started asking questions. Well, how does this apply to whatever? I ended up coming down from the stage, and then we all just got congregated in a bunch of chairs out in the audience together, and just started talking about, because all these guys are about rural broadband. Right. And a lot of them work for small towns, and some work for rural fiber optic deals. And we just had to change gears. But the cool thing is, and thanks to Jeff for saving me, those guys all walked out of there totally getting the value of it and how they could use it in their world. So that was good. But yeah, gosh, knowing your audience, I totally blew it.
You're like giving them science lessons, and they're like, we're lost.
I was. I was. It's like, woo!
You know, we have out here in Bandera, right? We have Bandera Electric Co-op. I think a lot of Texas areas have, especially in the rural areas, have co-ops. And, you know, you would be surprised. And I think I've talked a little bit about this. You know, they have fiber, and they're offering speeds that compete with, you know, high-speed internet that are at much better rates, you know, hands down. doesn't reach out to our ranch, but in a lot of the, I read all the threads, the community threads of how important it is and what they're using it for, and a lot of agricultural use, a lot of ranch use. But they also, from an advanced perspective, they seem to be like, their technology teams seem to be pretty advanced. They're looking at how to compete with 5G and some of the things that are the towers that are going up in different areas, and how they're still very crappy, and people aren't getting access like they thought they were going to get. And even competing with some of the, small wisps that are out there that have their own internet services, where Bandera's coming in and putting them out of business. So only in areas where we have no other option will you stick with that wisp or
there's
use your phone. So it's crazy. It's got to get the connectivity piece right.
There's a lot of WISP people at this event. In fact, the head of the whole WISPA association is here. And you're absolutely right. And in fact, that is the pathway most people take, is they have to get together with the electric utility co-op in rural areas in order to bring fiber out to these rural places, because the electrical utility co-ops already have the right of way. They already have dirt in the ground, poles, and so they have to work with them, and that's how they get fiber out there. A lot of it was really interesting in the morning. There's keynotes, and everybody was talking about, well, we're just minutes away from the Senate passing this whatever trillion dollar thing. They're all got their fingers crossed on that, because they're all about rural broadband. And the only way that's going to happen is a whole bunch of cash from the government and all these programs. And so that was a big deal for me. This has been so good for me, because I learned so much. There's this whole other side of the world that I just didn't know about.
It can be quite humbling to.
It is very humbling.
I'm so spoiled in my city life. There's so many things that are happening outside that, the limitations that they have and the conversations that they have about doing something with technology is so different than in the inner city or even suburban areas, where there's complete connectivity and so many options for connectivity.
It reminds me of, this stuck with me. I was at an event, and we had different end users talking about, IoT and solutions they're building. And this guy from the US was, going through the solution, and, we're getting the last 5% out of the grid, from a power standpoint. And then this guy from Philippines gets up and he's like, I just want to have power. Like a fundamentally different need. And so it depends on kind of where you are, how you view things, but definitely interesting. And then even on the, you look at the infrastructure side, so we're seeing with Edge, it's as much a real estate business as it is the compute itself. And so similar, you mentioned the utilities for broadband, is we're seeing more and more folks that are working with people that have parking garages. They can put immersion cooled data centers in to get them close to people, but it's actually part of, city infrastructure, so to speak, that boundary of public and private. So there's, we're just scratching the surface on how all of this stuff starts to bleed together, but especially important is how do you get this stuff out to the more rural areas, I think.
And you know what, we've over the past few years looking at some of the cities, that's how they would negotiate getting access to big 5G and some other technologies, is because they would say, okay, you do this for my city, or you install these towers in my city, and I want to be first, but I'm going to give you right of ways for other like projects that you're working on and things that you want to get done that will make you money. You may not make money, with these smart city projects, but I'm going to give you some access and right of way. So that exchange and that public-private partnership has been, that's the only way they believe that they're going to be able to make any inroads, because public only is just not working. Funds wise, especially.
Yeah, this is really thought provoking. I think Edge and Edge Cloud is going to look a lot different in the rural areas. It'll look a lot different for the scale out issues that it's really geared for, right? So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in some of these let's call them future underserved communities and areas. I think you're going to bump into the same problems that we have with connectivity. And, if you ever wonder why the U.S. Postal Service is the way they are, and public-private venture is exactly that, right? There's no money in delivering packages out to a little little obscure little street in the middle of the Yukon or in Alaska somewhere. It costs a lot of money to get that letter out there. So there's it's an age-old problem, but it'll be interesting to see how edge cloud can change the economics. I think that's really what we're all looking at here, is figuring out how do we scale these capabilities and drive down the economics so that everyone can benefit. So I think you guys are right there at the crux of the problem, and with something that will hopefully solve it, because we need to have it solved at some point. Right. Maybe not now, maybe not in the early phases of this whole edge computing journey, but at some point we have to make it make sense.
The key is, we've talked before about trust fabrics and where things are headed, and that's much more of a future state. But if you invest in the right infrastructure today and decouple applications and data from that infrastructure, it will be an evolutionary process over time, and start with something simple, today, of course, but trying to do it with a bunch of siloed stacks, when you consider all the complexities we're talking about between public and private, we mentioned dirty laundry before, of like psychology, and when you do different use cases, and what are the odds that say your manufacturing plant has everything with all the service providers, internal, external, all going to one cloud? It's almost just impossible for that to happen long term. So important to be thinking about today how you're doing things, but let's also not get ahead of ourselves on trying to solve the world quite yet.
With about 5 minutes left here, this episode is supposed to be called Dirty Laundry.
Oh, my bad.
Why
Why is it called Dirty Laundry?
Well, because he wanted to talk about dirty laundry.
No,
it is summertime.
Why dirty laundry? Let's at least,
because it's a dirty business.
We've talked about before, I think this was a really good conversation. We've talked about before, the importance of trust, and when a lot of people, when they start on these types of solutions, they're doing a use case. The use case that they end up finding valuable is not the one that they started with. As they kind of evolve from that basic thing, they realize where the real value is, but it's about getting started. But when you instrument the physical world with IoT, a lot of value can be generated, but also there's a lot of challenges that come up, and that's, I think, part of the reason why IoT is, I think, taken a while to take off, because it can expose dirty laundry. I didn't know that I was that efficient. I don't want my competition to know that I was that inefficient.
Or I know that I'm inefficient. I don't want anyone to know that I'm inefficient because my data is valuable.
I don't want anyone to know that I have 20 breaches a day.
And transparency would really suck. Transparency is bad for business. Basically what it boils down to.
Out at my vineyard, the sensors detected that I have smoke taint on my grapes. But I don't want anyone to know that I discovered that, because they're not going to buy my wine.
Yeah.
So
too much.
Yeah. Speaking of that, is worked a little bit with a company that had made these smart sensors that weigh beer kegs in a bar at all times.
Yeah.
Did I mention this before?
I remember the story.
I think it's this notion of, once you start measuring things, and there it's, the wait staff couldn't give free drinks to people, and then those people didn't want to come in anymore because they weren't getting treated right or whatever. They weren't getting their freebies, and the whole ecosystem fell down. And so we see that happening, but at the same time, it always gets trickier, which kind of lends back to the conversation you had when you're crossing between public and private boundaries, or private to private. And if it's within your company, there's a lot of things that you can do. It's also about perception. Video surveillance, there's cameras everywhere. Most people don't, think about it. Generally, if I put a camera on you to watch whether you're working, you're going to be really not cool with it. If I do one because you're working in a mine and I'm trying to protect your well-being, maybe I'm okay with that. It just depends on what are you doing.
Driving.
Part of it's interesting.
Driving. Nobody wants to the insurance companies to know how crappy of a driver they are and how many traffic violations that they have every uncited traffic violations that they commit every single trip. People are always just kind of rolling past the stop sign, right? They don't make a full stop. You're supposed to make.
Now we know, Leonard, what's happening with you.
I'm just citing what I observe other drivers doing. I'm like an awesome driver.
That Tesla roll.
I'm the best.
That Tesla roll. So on the dirty laundry dough discussion,
the Tesla roll.
Tesla roll. Every morning I go in and I do my Google search for news for IoT, and I just want to see what happened in the last 24 hours. So I change my settings to last 24 hours. And I would say probably 60-70% of the news stories have to do with something negative about IoT. Breaches, security, trust. So we also, as an industry, and all the information that's being out there, it presents IoT as being a very dirty business and high risk. And so I always want the perception out there is like, from a business and enterprise perspective, should I do this? What am I opening myself up to? What are the risks involved? What are the security requirements involved? Do I even know how to do this? Do I trust my partner to hold that SLA in place so it doesn't really put my business or enterprise at risk or my factory floor at risk? So those are the things I think about when I look at all those stories. I'm like, wow, there's just so much negativity around this industry right now from a news perspective. That's dirty laundry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, my old dirty laundry, my OG IoT vending machine dirty laundry that I've talked about before, back in the 90s, was when you discovered that all that transparency you're bringing about how much money the vending machines made and the inventory, and it turns out that the mafia owns the vending machines and they're not interested in that information being public because they're skimming off the top.
Right.
And we're just like, let's get out of this meeting as fast as we can before we get shot.
Oh my gosh. Physical risk.
Yeah. They're like, we don't want to know.
Yeah. But it's tough, right? And, for a lot of companies that have these aspirational solutions that are going to change the world, sometimes they don't understand all these barriers to transparency. I think that's one of the things that you have to factor in is, where is the dirty laundry problem going to be? And, what are some of the issues that are related to that as you pursue this solution or try to sell it? Or implement it? You're going to have holes in your data. You're going to have these gaps in visibility that just completely kill the value proposition of what you had in your PowerPoint at the very beginning. And to your point, Jason, a lot of times you end up with something different than what you started off with, because you do learn about these dirty laundry issues. And the classic one in the IT realm is different business units not wanting to share data, especially around customers. And it's like, well, you guys are like the same friggin' organization. Why wouldn't you want to share data? But they don't share data. And there's a whole laundry list, no pun intended, dirty laundry list of reasons why. And I don't think that the IoT or edge computing or whatever you want to call it is going to be immune from that issue. There's plenty of dirty laundry issues that I think is just part of it's that human factor.
It's part of, just look at it's any kind of, everything's a big ecosystem in the end, whether it's in the natural world or with technology. Yeah. And it's just about an equilibrium that it finds. And it's basically balancing value received and it's to give up privacy, over protecting your IP. And these are the things that where you by investing, this is why we think infrastructure is so important. By investing in it, kind of like we have the common internet, equilibriums will be found around those common baselines.
Yeah, and one person's dirty laundry could be someone else's service.
Yeah.
That they consume. You got to think of it like that. And so one of the things is, I think one of the things that you guys are doing that's interesting, you brought up Trust Fabric and you're bringing all the stuff around privacy and stuff, is how do you construct mechanisms, business models, if you want to call it that allow these folks who have critical data that are part of the big puzzle you're trying to solve, how do you help them monetize that, or at least get some share of the value that solving the problem entails? Otherwise, you're going to live with these critical gaps for a long time that just completely undermine what you're trying to do. So I think, you were saying the Trust Fabric stuff, you could, that might be further down the line, but I think there's a number of opportunities where you can do that. You can build these things, apply them in high value areas where they can be instrumental in getting us to where we want to be with trust, right? And through that trust, gain an ability to have some of this transparency where there's less of a dirty laundry problem that gets in the way, because these people who have the dirty laundry and the data, they're holding back because they don't want to give up the dinero, basically.
Yeah.
Data dinero.
If you take control of your data the moment it's created, and then all permutations work from edge to cloud, wherever you're processing, whatever you're doing, you invest in the right tools, and you can choose how dirty your laundry is, or how dirty your laundry is.
Exactly.
Involved in where you see the value versus privacy curve lying, and it'll evolve. But it's just something that there's a lot of business value to be gained here. That's not, but I do agree. There's a lot of kind of negative stuff that you see, but it's just stuff you need to think about.
Yeah, these are the problems that we're going to encounter, right? And some people have encountered them already. Others, they should just expect it, and that there's guys like you guys at ZEDEDA that are kind of looking forward and already thinking about the solutions to a lot of these issues that are frankly going to get in the way of edge cloud and whatever you want to call it.
You know how ironic it is for your name ZEDEDA to actually have the word data in it?
Oh. I hadn't thought about that.
It just sounds like it.
I think it's time that we wash this dirty laundry.
I know. Empty that coffee cup is empty. Does anybody
Wrap
drinking
this
coffee?
thing up. It's time to drive to Santa Fe.
It's time for a
it
beer.
is. Yeah.
It's time for a mimosa.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Bloody Mary. Okay.
We can go that way too.
Sign up if you guys want to, if you're listening, and we'll be building on themes like this and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
It's ZEDEDA.com/transform. Free to register, and there'll be replays and all that as well. So, good stuff.
Yeah.
I like ZEDEDA better than ZEDEDA because it just makes me laugh.
Data.
And I think it's actually ZEDEDA, like rhyming with my Run DMC My ZEDEDA song.
my Adidas.
ZEDEDA.
When I first saw the name, I thought it was pronounced ZEDEDA.
Yeah, that's how most people say it.
Yeah.
But it turns out you were wrong.
I usually am when it comes to pronouncing some of these new company names. They're challenging these days.
Just like you thought when you first saw Losant, it was Losant instead of Losant.
Exactly.
ZEDEDA.
And I would say Losant. I was thinking Losant.
I thought it was Lassant. I've known those guys for a while.
But as soon as you talk to those guys, they'll correct you.
Now I'm going to have that song stuck in my head. My ZEDEDA.
ZEDEDA. Exactly. I'm loving that. I'm
We
loving
need
that.
to close out with that song. Who can play it?
Oh, I can't. We have to rehearse that, and I think
Okay.
Jason needs
All
to come up
right.
with
Next
some
time.
tailored lyrics. But and once again, hey, Jason, to you and the folks at ZEDEDA, thank you so much for donating to the best cause, which is Elevate Our Kids. And so really appreciate that. And it's great having you on. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for hanging in there and waiting for the theme of our episode at the last 5 minutes. Friggin' amazing.
We eventually
Really
get to it.
appreciate your endurance and your tolerance for a ramble. And it was great, though. I think there was a number of takeaways that I got from this that were pretty eye-opening. So appreciate the conversation. We'll see you next week. Remember, follow us, subscribe, like. We're at www.iotcoffeetalk.com. And we'll see you guys next week, right? And don't forget, register and attend Transform, ZEDEDA Transform 2021. ZEDEDA
Transform.
Be there or be lame.
Adios.
Bye, guys.
See you.
Bye.